Asteroids was released in the arcades in 1979 and ended up being one of the most popular games of the era. It was ported to the Atari 2600 in 1981 and went on to be one of the standout titles of the console. You play as a crew aboard a space shuttle who's out on patrol and suddenly is engulfed in a sea of asteroids. To survive, you must blast away at all the asteroids, but shooting them just breaks them up into two smaller pieces. Then each of those break off into two smaller pieces before finally vaporizing. The smaller ones are obviously harder to shoot and are worth more points. The large ones are 20 points, the medium ones are 50, and the small ones are 100. There are 16 trajectories of fire, and you get quite a rapid rate, so with a large amount of targets on the screen, there's plenty of action to be had. Pressing left and right turns your ship around, pressing the button fires, and pushing up will start driving your ship forward, but the controls here suck. You can't stop unless you turn yourself around and accelerate in that direction as you're coasting backwards. It's kinda like in Space War, only that game was a piece of shit. Thankfully, staying still works just fine, and I recommend you utilize this strategy the whole time unless you need to move to avoid certain death or if there are a few asteroids left on the screen and you want to move in for a quicker kill. Because the biggest problem with the driving is that there's so much shit around you. It's hard to keep yourself from getting blindsided, especially when you're close to the edges because there's no barrier. Crossing one side of the screen will bring you back to the other side. Same goes for the asteroids. And asteroids aren't the only hazards in the game. There's also satellites that fire at you in several directions, and UFOs who are harder to hit because they're smaller and faster. These other two enemies will show up if the difficulty switch is on A. If it's on B, then the asteroids will be the only hazards you'll see. Other variations include a two-player alternating mode, different speeds for the asteroids, a different set of points that allow you an extra life, or no extra lives. There's also 3 special moves and defenses you can use by pressing down. The first one is Hyperspace, which will make you disappear in thin air, and then you'll reappear somewhere else at complete random, even if you're not moving. It really only comes in handy if you're about to collide with something, if you can naturally react in time. Otherwise, it's a huge risk because you could land right in the path of an asteroid. I'd recommend the second defense mechanism, the shield. It will give you immunity from damage, and the good news here is that you can actually see where you are and you don't have to move. Just don't keep the shield up for more than 2 seconds or you explode. The third and final trick you can pull off will flip you 180 degrees in a split second, which is great if you need to turn quick to destroy an oncoming enemy and avoid the slow turning that may not be fast enough to save you ordinarily. There's also the option to not have any of these moves at your disposal, if you want to handicap yourself a little. Then there's the other extreme, a beginner mode with very slow asteroids and a more generous point system for giving you extra lives. Normally it's 10 or 20,000 depending on the variations you choose, and here it's 5,000. The music in the background, if you want to call it that, is fucking annoying. Ugh, I know it's Atari, and the sound capabilities weren't that great, but come on. I highly recommend playing this game on mute while listening to music of your own choice, which is a shame because the sounds of the bullets and the explosions have to be sacrificed, and those sound fine. Oh well. Aside from the soundtrack, the only other flaw is the driving controls, but like I said, that's forgivable because you don't need to move around that much. Of course, it's not as awesome as the arcade version, but you can't hold that against it. This is about as strong a port as there could be on the Atari. It kicks asteroids. Wow, that was fucking lame.